Hey, 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 happy Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to Mission for Mental Health. I am your host, Jackie Robinson. Man, I'm so glad to be here again in the room, in the house, because this is my happy space. This is where I love to be. And I am really getting excited about these topics, man. You know, it's funny because the men they got something to say, and I guess kind of I've been ignoring them. So they've been ready to step up and share and expose some things and shed some light on us to some of the situations that they go through that we really don't even like we don't think about because we're so busy doing our own thing, right? You know, we're so busy doing us that we don't really think about what's going on with them. So I got a good one for y'all. I got a good one. When I asked him, I wasn't sure what he was gonna say, but he watched my show a couple weeks ago with Dre, and he started to share some things about himself. And I was just like, now some of it I kind of knew, but I didn't know it all, and I really didn't know how how divorce and life affected him until we started talking. So I was like, would you be willing to come on and share? And at first, I don't know if he thought I was kidding or not, but he said yeah. So, I ran with this thing before he backed out. So I got him in the background. I'm about to bring him to the stage. So, because y'all know I could talk and talk and talk and talk, but we only got an hour. We don't have that long. So I'm about to bring him to the stage. Y'all welcome. Give him some hand claps in the chat, interact, leave comments, talk, do all that good stuff. So I'm going to bring him to the stage. Bam, there he is.
Hey, there I am.
What's going on with you?
Hey, how are you?
I'm outstanding. Welcome to Mission for Mental Health.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm glad you said yes.
Well, here we are. I'm glad I said yes too.
I'm
It's not
glad
the
that you
most
did
comfortable
yes.
thing for me. I'm kind of a in the background kind of guy, but we did have a good discussion, and I do think some of the things that you're talking about are very important. So,
I do too. I do too. So, tell my audience a little bit about yourself. What do you do? How you could tell how we know each other, sort of, kind of, and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
okay, so we're coworkers. I'm in law enforcement. I have been since '98. I'm
He's
engaged.
old, y'all.
I also have
98. That's a
Also have,
long
yeah,
time.
98. Not long enough though. It's we're not at the 30-year mark yet, so it's not long enough that I can leave.
Right.
I'm the
Right.
father of three kids. So if
Mhm.
you do the math on the I'm engaged and I'm the father of three kids, that tells you that I'm divorced also.
Right.
So at one point in my life I kind of defined myself in my career. If you'd have asked me probably 4 years ago to tell you about who I am, I'd have started off by saying, I'm a police officer. But I think of myself more of, you know, uh, in broader terms now than I used to. So,
Right.
I'm an engaged father of three who happens to work in law enforcement.
Yes, yes, you are. So you have 3 kids. Are they still little ones or are they adults now?
Um, Legally, two of them are adults. You know how that is. I mean, they're not ever really grown. But no, but my oldest daughter, I got two daughters and a son, and the two girls are older. The oldest is
Okay.
21, the youngest is 18, and my son
Mhm.
is 14. He'll be 15 in March.
Okay. So yeah, they think they grown, but they still in them
Right.
pockets, right?
Right.
I
Yes,
get that.
ma'am.
I know I got 5, so I know. So okay. And so we're here to talk a little bit about divorce. So and how divorce affects your mental health. And so you mentioned that you were married and now that you're divorced. How long were you married?
16 years, I believe. Six,
Six, that's
15, 16
a
years
long time.
somewhere in there.
Kids,
But
y'all were
but
kids, youngsters when you did
I
this?
was 20, 21 or 22. I had just graduated the academy.
Mhm,
So
mhm. Yeah.
I think we were married in 99. So
Okay.
October of
So young.
99, if I
So
remember right.
so at this stage of the game, you're trying to navigate life. You're just
Just
trying to
trying to
figure
figure
it
it
out.
out.
Just trying to
Right.
figure it out. Yeah, babies. So I get
Mhm.
that part. So 16 years, and then of course, you don't have to go in depth as to what caused the divorce, but hey, this is something that y'all both decided. A lot of us have been there. I've been divorced. I know quite a few people that have been divorced. And to be honest, I don't really know anyone except for Dre, I guess I could say, who had a good divorce. Most people I know, the divorce has been, it's especially with women, it's just been horrible, especially when the guy has moved on and things like that. So, um, let's see. We're already getting them comments. I love it. Tell it like it is. So, not really going in depth as to what caused the divorce. What was it like
Mhm.
when you all decided? Well, let me ask you this. How old were the babies when you all decided to divorce?
So my son, who's the youngest, he was in kindergarten. We separated. It was roughly a week after his fifth birthday. And I
Oh,
remember because we had been talking about the separation and his birthday was coming up. And I was really adamant about the fact that I didn't want it to be right before his birthday because I didn't want that to be, I didn't want that to be something that he marked his life by. I didn't want, I don't want it, wouldn't want him looking back thinking I remember them, my mom and dad split up the week before my fifth birthday or right when I
right,
turned 5 or something around there.
right, right.
So they were still
So,
young. I think the oldest was just in middle school or maybe in
mhm,
fifth grade.
okay. And so when you all had this conversation that, you know what, I don't really like being with you, and you don't really like being with me, and we're going to call this thing quits. What was that conversation like?
Um, I don't really think it was a conversation. I think it was a series of arguments honestly, over years. And there was kind of a breaking point for me to where I left the house.
Mhm.
And even when I left, it was a while before I actually filed paperwork. Um, and um, that wasn't necessarily out of any illusion of the marriage working as much of it. It was whether or not I was doing what was right by my children by
Right.
by leaving.
Right.
So unfortunately, we didn't have like a calm sit down conversation of, hey, I don't want to do this. I don't think this is going to work. This isn't what's best for me. This isn't what's best for you. Let's try to do what's best for the kids in this situation. It was a lot more tumultuous, which I think, most divorces are. It was fairly ugly
Yeah.
um, throughout the entirety. I mean, from the time we physically separated until the paperwork was signed.
Right.
Um,
So no therapy, there was no therapy. You just knew, hey, we're
well,
arguing
no,
way
no,
too
we
much.
had been in therapy. We had been in therapy as a couple on and off for years.
Okay.
So the therapy wasn't working, and I'm not going to not going to try to villainize anybody in the story. I've got my version of the story, and she has her version of the
Absolutely.
story. But at the end of the day, I think it was a situation where the marriage could have worked if either one of us was willing to give up everything that was important to us. I mean, we were that diametrically opposed on just about everything in life. She probably could have been happy with me if I would have done things exactly the way she wanted, which would have made, basically it would have made me miserable. And I think the opposite is true. I think I could have been happy with her if she would have gone along with the things I wanted in life, but that's just not
Right.
who she was as a person.
Right.
And so in and of itself, I think it got to a point where the relationship itself was just toxic. And I'm not saying that was her fault or my fault. I mean, I'm sure we both contributed to it, but ultimately that was what was the breaking point for me, was when I realized that it was a toxic situation. It wasn't going to get any better. And, I'm bringing up my kids in the middle of the whole thing.
Right. Do you think that um, the kids were observing the toxic part of the relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, I think once I started to realize that is when I started to weigh out whether what I was doing by trying to stay in the home and not have my children come from a broken home, whether or not I was really doing any good by keeping them in that. I started
Right.
talking to different therapists and reading about the idea of modeling behavior. And like you and I talked about the other day, kids usually don't do what you tell them to do. Kids do what they see you doing, you know. So
Exactly.
whether they realize it or not, whether it's on a conscious level or an unconscious level, that's kind of the route they go. And I had a therapist ask me once if one of my kids was in the situation I was in, what would my advice be to them? You know,
Mm,
and
that's a
that was
good
when I really
question too.
started. Yeah, yeah, that was when I kind of started looking at it from a whole different perspective.
Yep, that's an awesome question. We should ask ourselves that with quite a few situations we're in life. How would we advise our children if that was them? How would we advise them? Yeah, so I understand. I know about that. Can anybody relate? Can anybody relate? Let me know in the comments if you can relate so far to what Michael is saying regarding children, modeling what we present. Yeah, they hear us when we're talking, but are they really hearing what we're saying, or are they really paying attention to what we're doing and how we're behaving? And is that really more of an effect on them or not? I agree with you. I think it is. They end up becoming what we are.
Right. Yeah.
They end up becoming what we are. So you decide, hey, this is you all decide, okay, this is toxic, and you decide to move out.
Right.
What happens after that? How long did you stay in the separated portion of it before you decided, okay, you know what? Or did you stay separated with the thought of maybe we can bring it back together? Or I know I'm gone. This is just the stepping stone.
Um, for me personally, I felt like, short of some type of miracle, for lack of a better term, once I left the house, I didn't think I was ever going to go back. And for me, that was always the idea of having to sit my kids down and tell them, this is happening. I'm moving out. This is what it means. This is where I'm going to be. This is when I'm going to see you. For me, once that was done, that was kind of like that was the point of no return for me. That was the
Mhm.
thing that had held me in the house for as long as I'd been debating whether or not this was something I wanted to do. And again, I don't know. I mean, she might have been debating it as long as I had been, or longer. Who's to say? I'm not trying to make it sound like I was the only one who was unhappy there, but um, that was the thing that had kept me there, was having to sit down and tell them, "Hey, I'm not going to live with you guys anymore." Once
Yeah.
that was done, everything else after that was just incidental. Whatever the property division, the money I had to pay, like, that stuff really didn't matter to me. The worst part had been done.
The worst part had been sitting down telling them that you were leaving. What was their response?
Um, it, they were
I know
pretty
the
stoic.
5-year-old probably was really confused,
Yeah,
but the
he
older
yeah.
ones.
Yeah, my son didn't really he didn't like it. He didn't he did not like the idea of me not being there. He wanted to know if he could come, so I had to kind of go through all that with him. The girls were pretty stoic for the most part. I think afterwards, after it set in, it was probably a little bit different, but the initial discussion, they handled it a lot better than I thought they were going to.
Mhm. A little more resilient than they thought. And maybe they saw, because they were a little bit older, mom and dad is arguing, and I just don't like hearing that.
Well, I will say that talking to my girls, especially since they've gotten older, they both said that they expected us to divorce for years. Like they just
Yeah.
knew it was something that was going to happen, or they thought it was something that was going to happen, just based
Yeah.
on the arguments, based on the way the relationship was going. So I don't think they were too shocked when they
Correct.
heard the news. I think it was
Mhm.
the adjustment that was difficult for them.
The adjustment. Was your wife able to stay in the home with the kids, or did you all have to sell the property
She
or
was.
anything
That
like
was
that?
no, that was something that was so a little bit of background on me. My parents split up when I was a between a freshman and a sophomore in high school, which
Okay.
probably really shouldn't have been as impactful on me as it was at that stage in my life. I mean, I was older.
Mhm.
They definitely had a dysfunctional marriage. We all knew it was just a matter of time before they divorced. But for whatever reason, that was really impactful on me. And
Right.
one of the biggest things about that was the fact that we ended up having to move out of the house that I had grown up in. So for me, that was a huge deal, wanting to do everything I could to keep the kids in their house. I didn't really care about equity. I didn't really care about anything other than trying to find a way to do at least what I could do on my part to keep them in that house. And
Right.
if things were to change, if she decided to sell it or whatever, that I can't control any of that. But I didn't want to ever have it be something with me to where if I would have done something different, they could have stayed with their friends that they'd known. Because again, that was the house my oldest daughter came home from the hospital in. They've
Right.
lived there their whole lives. That's kind of their foundation.
Right.
But oddly, you hear a lot of stories about we tend to parent in a way that we wish we had been parented because to us that's what I try to be the father to my son that I wish I had had because
Right.
that's what I wanted, so I assume that's what he wants, right? So
Correct.
like we have to I check in with him every now and then and kind of have those discussions because I realize he's not me, and just because I wanted a certain thing from a father doesn't mean those are the things that he wants or he needs.
Right.
So relating that back to the story, like the three of them really could have cared less about the house. Like I've talked to them about it over the years, and they say looking back, that was the least of their concerns. Like it was nice that they got to stay there, but that when they were worried about stuff, that was never anything they were worried about. And looking
Correct.
back,
That's something that
they
we
don't
think.
think it
Yeah.
yeah, they don't really think it would have bothered them if they would have had to move necessarily. So that's just
Total opposite from you. Total opposite from you, because you felt like, gosh, I hate that I had to leave, my house. But, the kids are like, we don't care about this house.
Yeah, at least two of the three of them. The my middle daughter, well, my middle child, my younger daughter, she has said before that she liked the fact that she could stay there because she felt like that was kind of her home base, and
Right.
she stayed there through high school. But the oldest and the youngest were just like, nah, it was just kind of like where we were at. We could have gone anywhere.
Right.
And I think that just speaks to the fact that we navigate our relationships based on our perspective of the world and our perspective of life, and we
Mm-hmm.
just assume that everybody kind of has the same life experiences and perspectives and feelings and wants, and that's just not the even with your own children, that's just not
Right.
always the case.
Right. So when you all were deciding to, go through the divorce, I know we were talking about um you were working part-time jobs
Right.
and how you had to include, you know, we are for those of you that are on here that don't know, there's probably not one law enforcement officer that don't work a part-time job. And it's not like because we just love throwing that uniform on and getting somewhere and standing
Right.
up somewhere and working extra hours than the hours that we've already given the job. But we do it because we don't make a lot of money. We don't go
Right.
into law enforcement because, hey, I'm gonna be rich. We go into it because, we want to protect and serve. That's our favorite line. But we do it because we care. We do it. We're public servants because we care about the people. But it's not a job that doesn't pay well. It gives you satisfaction with being able to help people out of certain situations. Um, but the pay, not so great. So we all get out here. For those of you in YouTube land that don't know, we all, practically all, work extra jobs for extra money. Right.
Mhm.
What you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't know. Everybody knows maybe one or two guys who didn't work part-time jobs or gotten to a point where they weaned themselves off of them and they didn't work them. But more often than not, especially a uniform or not a uniform police department, but a police department as opposed to some other type of law enforcement agencies, uh,
Yeah,
99% of the guys you work with in a PD are going to be working some form of part-time job, whether it's,
correct.
regular, steady, same day every week, or whether they're filling in at different places or whatever.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
when you got a split and it's time to look at that child support agreement, all the money, even the part-time money, is included or not.
In mine it was. I've heard some other people where it wasn't, and I think a lot of it depends on the part-time jobs too. Like, there are some part-time jobs that are cash jobs. All the jobs I worked were either W-2 or 1099. Um, and I'm sure in certain divorces, um, things might be different in different cases. In my case, all of the income I made was figured into my child support and alimony obligations. So
So what
my
if
my
you lost that part-time job? They're
I
not
was told
guaranteed.
I was told I should find another if I were to lose one.
Now, also, you said that your part-time was on the weekend. And in most
Yeah,
cases, when you're doing your visitation schedule, it's
that
the
is
weekend.
also on the, and that was something that I brought up um, during our mediation. The fact that what I had asked was, can we take the amount of money I make off part times and cut it in half because I'm about to lose half of those hours by being with my children every other weekend. And I was basically told no, that wasn't an option. That I would need to figure out a way to either make the income up or do without or whatever the case may be. So, yeah, financially, it was a very difficult spot to be in.
There's a hard spot to be in, especially, I used to joke with the rookie officers, and I would say, hey, you guys are hot commodities right now. These girls are gonna be throwing it at you left and right. It's just gonna come. And you don't want to get caught up in that miscellaneous C. And they're like, well, what's miscellaneous C?
Miscellaneous C.
You know what miscellaneous C is, right?
Oh,
The C
I,
stands for child support.
child
So
support.
so you see FICA in them and Georgia State in them and your medical insurance, your pension, and then you got miscellaneous C on there. And miscellaneous C is more than your pension, and she's more than your insurance, and she's more than your taxes. But she is that money that you're paying out of your check
Right.
to them baby mamas. So I used to tell
That's
them all
it.
the time, be careful out here in these streets. That miscellaneous fee can hurt you. A lot of officers I know that's been in this situation ended up in like rent-free apartments and things like that because they
Yeah.
couldn't
Right.
afford it. So now that we're at the okay, she ex-wife is in the home, you wanted her to stay in the home with the kids.
Mhm.
Um, judge is telling you, I'm gonna need your check and your extra to go to her. She never once said, hey, that's okay. I don't need that. She never said that.
I don't remember that ever being said.
Hmm, okay. So I guess she felt like I'm gonna need all you got.
I assume she did. I assume that's how she felt.
I'm gonna need all you got. I don't care how you making it out here in these streets. So that has to be a difficult time where you are um losing some money, which is which up and down. Yes, that's going toward, I'm hoping this money that I'm giving is going towards my children and not just
Right.
your lifestyle. And um I'm out here in these streets. I got to find another place to live. And I can't see my kids the way I want to because I got to get out here and hustle these jobs. So when we were talking, you were talking about how all this totality of things started to affect you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about that.
So, the financial aspect of it is obviously difficult for anybody who's been there. You know what it's like. I think I know two guys who had an income that was such that even with their divorce, they were still sorry, I was reading the comments.
Yeah,
They were still able to maintain an average to above average lifestyle. Um, but again, that's rare. That's two individuals that I know out of all the guys I know who are divorced. Generally speaking, I don't think that's the case. And in one of those cases, the guy was just very, very well off. In the other case, the guy was very well off, and his wife, who he divorced, was very rational. She was very much along the line of the harder I make this now, we have to co-parent together. What kind of relationship are we establishing for co-parenting? Also, like, I don't want my children's father living in a questionable part of town where they're not going to be safe when they're with him. Um, so I think a lot of it just depends on situations like that. But generally speaking, financially, it's devastating to most guys when you figure up the child support and the alimony. It's just very difficult to live anywhere near the type of life that you would be able to live off of your income otherwise, if you weren't having to portion it out that way. And I think the issue there doesn't come so much from the loss of money as it does from the loss of a feeling of independence. I fortunately had a very good support system during my separation and divorce. But the issue there, and I've talked to other married men about this, is you end up feeling like you lose your independence as a man because in
mm,
one way or another you're dependent on your friends or your family, whether that's staying at a buddy's house or somebody giving if you're in the law enforcement field, somebody giving you a part-time job as a courtesy officer at a free apartment, or whatever the case may be. All the money that you're getting is going towards your children's needs, and even at that point you're not providing for them in the way you wish you could provide for them.
correct.
And that's a difficult thing to shoulder as a guy, as a man, as a father. For me personally, that was just part of it. That was kind of the crappy part of being divorced, is knowing that was going to come along with it, that there was going to be that kind of financial ruination that you go through. But um, the loss of the time with the children for me was what was devastating. I mean, I figured it out one time, and it was like 144 hours a month is what I got with
Oh,
my kids. So, and that's every other weekend. And then at the time we had Monday night dinners. Um, and then of course we split like the school breaks up or whatever. I got them for 1 week during the summer, but I was arguing with a boss of mine when I was still at the police department about getting off call and for a weekend. And I just told him, I'm like, I get 144 hours a month that I can see my kids, and
144
I, I
hours.
can't I can't let this eat into it. You don't really need me here. You have other people who can do this job. I need to be able to be with my kids. So
Yeah.
for me, that was devastating. And the idea that all the other hours in that month, other than those 144, I felt like I was missing a huge portion of myself. I'm definitely somebody who, being a father, uh, meant more to me than anything else in the world. Uh, I loved my kids literally more than my own life, and not being able to see them on a nightly basis, when that relationship is reduced to phone calls at night when you can get them on the phone, you know. Um, and then, like I said,
Yeah,
from
and
Friday,
key
it's
word, when you can get them on the phone.
right, because especially when you're dealing with younger kids, it doesn't really matter what the divorce papers say about every night there shall be a phone call or Skype or FaceTime from this time to this time, right? Somebody's got to be there to answer the phone. And sometimes the phone was answered and sometimes the phone wasn't answered. And
Wasn't.
and,
Mm,
and I'm sure, I mean, I'm not saying that that was all out of maliciousness. I'm sure there were legitimate times where they weren't home. There were other things going on. I mean, life goes on outside of, divorce dead world. Um, but I can remember those nights just, making the phone call and getting a voicemail, and it just that's all I've been looking forward to all day was talking to those kids, and then it doesn't
mm,
happen, and that would be a blow. So for me, that was the worst part of the whole thing. And I definitely was at a point where I had, I don't know, some type of depression, whether it was situational or clinical. I don't really know. I never looked into it that deeply. I did have, a couple of therapists recommend antidepressants, which I just was adamantly against. I've got some family history where people didn't do very well on that
got it.
type of medication,
Got it.
and I just didn't want to. I didn't want to mess with it. Um, One of the biggest fears, and I guess again this goes back to my childhood. My father was a very different man before my parents' divorce and after. And I don't know exactly what that was. What all the factors leading
What
up
did
to
you
that
see
were.
that was different? What did you see that was different before and after the divorce?
Um, I do feel like the version of him I saw after the divorce was probably closer to who he really was. I think that the version of him I knew before the divorce was almost, maybe somebody he was trying to be. He
Mm,
was a lot more selfish after the divorce. He was a lot less concerned with, uh, I guess, concerned with fatherhood overall. He was a lot more concerned with what he wanted, what was best for him. Um, he wasn't as concerned with being a role model.
mm,
Growing up, he was very, very religious. We were very much in the church. He was always using the Bible as a way to articulate the way you should or should not behave, and all of that kind of flew out the window after the divorce.
okay.
Um, but his personality just changed, and I think that was one of the things that was very difficult for me to deal with, was that I didn't feel like he was the same person,
Correct.
and I didn't want my kids to feel that way about me. And part of that led into me not wanting to take any type of antidepressant, or I didn't
Okay.
want to do anything that was going to change how I acted, change my personality, and then have
Or
my
change what
kids.
they saw of you, how they
Right,
perceive
right.
you.
Exactly, because I didn't want them to be in a situation where they felt like they lost their family, so to speak, and now, like, my dad's still here, but this isn't the same guy. It's not the same with him now. He's different. If I could control that, I wanted to. And so I just chose not to mess with any of the medication.
Right. So, you were talking about how you were in a dark place.
Oh yeah.
Um, so let's talk about that too.
Okay.
Um, what if you don't mind? So when you
Go ahead.
say that, what does that mean?
Um, Again, I didn't really ever get a lot of clinical um diagnosis, I guess, as far as the depression. But in my mind, there's no doubt that I was suffering from depression. And I used to just say that I was depressed, because I didn't even want to say that, yeah, I'm suffering from depression or I have depression. I would just say, yeah, I'm just depressed, man. My life really sucks right now. I'm not with my kids,
What
you know.
was happening to make you feel like your life sucked? Like what were you doing? Or
So
what were you not
it
doing?
was what sucked about it was the absence of the three things that I love most on the planet. That I mean that was it. It was living day-to-day life without exposure to my children. It just crippled me. I was at the time I was working a 4-3, which means we worked 4 days on, we were off three, and I was off Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So Mondays, like clockwork, I would be at my kids' school at whatever time the first one of them had lunch, and I would stay there until the next one had lunch, and then I would stay there until the youngest had lunch, or vice versa. I can't remember who went when. But I would spend the majority of the time sitting up at the school, either sitting with them through lunch or waiting for them to come to lunch. And then I was, picking them up, and it was like everything was just a stretch until the next time I got to see my kids. Um, and I was working a lot of part-time jobs in between, because we
Right.
talked about it earlier. Like I had to make that
Right.
money up
Had to make
because
it up. Mhm.
yeah, hard fast rule for me was just if I had the kids, I was not working. Unless it was just something that, I was called in for something. It was something that couldn't be avoided, but I would not work any part-time jobs when I had them. So for me, it was not being with them. It was the constant feeling that I had failed them in some way. I had failed them
Right.
by not being able to keep the marriage together. There was a lot of guilt about that. And when I say that, I'm not saying that there was guilt about anything that led to the divorce necessarily, as much as there was guilt about the fact that I couldn't figure out a way to stay in the house, that I couldn't figure out a way to create an environment that was less toxic. Um,
Mhm.
that that I ended up in a position to where they were from that I wasn't with them. They were from a broken home that they had to deal with growing up, going back and forth. It used to kill, and it sounds kind of silly now, but it used to kill me that all three of them would drag backpacks back and forth,
Back
on the
and forth.
weekends,
Yeah.
because I did everything in my power to be sure they had everything at my house that they would possibly need. Their own tennis shoes, their own clothes, socks, underwear, their own bedroom stuff, their own bathroom stuff. Like I
Mhm.
said, two of my kids are girls. I was sure they had everything they could possibly need here,
Right.
just because I didn't want them to feel like that was a normal part of their life, having to pack their stuff up and be shifted back and forth. I wanted them to feel like they had kind of two homes or two home bases as opposed to having to ping pong back and forth between places. So there was a lot of guilt and feeling like I had failed over that.
Mhm.
And I think that was where a lot of that came from. It wasn't necessarily that there weren't good things in my life. There were. I mean, I was dating a girl I'm engaged to now, and she was amazing. But I think a lot of times I didn't appreciate it, or I didn't recognize it, and it was probably because of the fact that I was feeling so depressed.
Mm.
When you're in that place, it's like nothing really matters, no matter how good it is. If it's not solving whatever is gnawing away at your heart and soul, like you can acknowledge that, but yeah, that's nice. But at the end of the day, I'm still just breathing. So
Just going
it,
just
it
going through sound like you're just kinda just going through the motion of life.
yeah, yeah. I think
Going to work a
I spent a
part-time and
long
trying
time.
to the happiness only comes when I get the kids.
That was a huge part of it, and that caused a lot of Well, it didn't cause a lot of problems, but it definitely caused some problems in my relationship. And I think that's because she felt that she didn't make me happy, that there was something wrong with her, that she
Mm.
wasn't fulfilling something in me, that she wasn't good enough. And, I tried to explain to her several times, like, it's not you. It's got like, you're great, but what is making me sad has nothing to do with you. And
Right.
being around you doesn't feel that. I mean, the only way I know to explain it for myself is it was like I was constantly grieving. Um,
Damn. How
Grieving
many
the
years
absence of
did
my
you do
children.
this? How long did you do
God,
this?
my oldest daughter came to live with me her sophomore or junior year in high school,
So one
and
of
I
them
think,
came to live with you.
well, actually, all three of them have lived with me at this point.
Okay.
Um, so my son is 14. He's been living with me since he was halfway through seventh grade. My youngest daughter, who's 18, she's living with me for a short period of time now. She'll be moving to Texas in a couple of weeks, but she's been with me for about 2 weeks, so she'll be here with about two or three more. Um, but I think that was it. I think I kind of saw light at the end of the tunnel when McKenna came to live with me.
Okay.
It was like it was kind of like somebody put a tourniquet on me, or a decent sized band-aid on a bullet hole. I mean, it was um just having her around again made it easier for me to breathe.
It made you feel whole?
Not totally whole, because I was missing the other two, but it made me feel like there was hope. It made
Hmm.
me feel like, you know, there was there was a way to recover from all this, that it wasn't always going to be
Hmm.
as bad as it was. Um, so yeah, that was a line. And again, like I told you before, that was the most devastating part of it to me. I told you that when I used to drop them off on Sundays, probably for the first year, maybe maybe 2 years, when I would drop them off on Sunday nights, I would be absolutely devastated. I mean, it got to the point for a while with my fiance where she would be like, "Look, I don't know if you need to come over after you drop them off." And it was just because
Sounds real bad.
I was so emotionally drained, um, that and looking at it, I can see it'd be hard not to take it personally. It would be hard
Absolutely.
not to take it like, well, if you don't want to be here, you can just leave. But it was almost like at times it weighed on her how much it weighed on me. And I couldn't articulate or explain that it had nothing to do with her, or nothing. She wasn't, it's not that you weren't doing enough of something, or you're not making me happy, or you're not, it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with
Right.
just this absence, this gnawing absence, and
Yeah.
how there's only one thing that makes it right, and that's them.
Yeah.
And I will say that I probably had, and I mean, I was told at one point by a therapist that I probably had a unhealthy level of emotional investment in my kids, that it shouldn't be to the point that it was devastating me the way it was for as long as it was. That was, something I needed to look at, and maybe process and do some work on. And
Yeah.
looking back, it's hard to see things. It's hard in any situation. It's hard to really see it clearly when you're in it. But looking back, I can see where I was definitely over the line in some places. There were definitely some
Were you
places I could have.
afraid that you were going to be replaced?
Actually,
And
no,
you
that's
wanted
one of
to
the things that.
ensure that that imprint is there, that I'm your dad, regardless of whatever your mom does,
No, no,
I'm your
that's,
dad.
that was one thing that I never feared in the least. I was always very, very confident about my relationship with them. Even when she started dating again and remarried, that portion of it was never an issue. I think I think the portion of it that bothered me was the fear of them perceiving that I wasn't there for them, that they needed their father for something and he didn't come through. So that grew into a ridiculous sense of duty and obligation,
Hmm.
to where I would get a phone call at 10:30 at night where, hey, I'm supposed to bring a big bag of M&Ms to science class tomorrow, and I forgot, and mom said it's too late to go to the store. And doesn't matter where I'm at or what I'm doing, because now what we're doing is going to buy M&Ms and leave them on the front porch or the
Yeah.
mailbox. And you
Yeah.
can come with me or you can stay here. It doesn't really matter, but I'm fixing to go do this,
Yeah.
you know. Um, and again, my
It seems
fiance at
like
the
you just
time.
didn't want to disappoint them. Like you just never, you wanted them to always see that I'm here no matter what. Like you never wanted to disappoint them, or you wanted to always show I'm always going to be here for you. I'm always here
Yeah,
no matter what.
that's exactly what it was. And it wasn't, and I heard this a lot from different people, and it wasn't the idea of wanting to be the good guy, wanting to be the Disneyland dad or the superhero. Like, I could have cared less about any of that. What I wanted is for my kids to know innately that if they needed me for something, they could depend on me. That, um, there would never be a time, I always wanted them to know that in a worst case scenario, there's that analogy about, like, I don't want my kids to be like, oh crap, I can't let my parents find out about this, they'll kill me, versus, oh God, I got to call my dad. Like, this is terrible. I got to call and that's
Yeah.
always what I wanted, was that, like, we'll deal with whatever the consequences are. And that's the other part of that too, is it was never the idea of call me because I'll get you out of trouble, because that's not the promise I'm making. You're going to be
Right.
in trouble,
Yeah.
but you won't go through it by yourself. Like, I
I'm
probably
here.
can't help you with this, but I'll stand next to you, I even told my son once, like, I mean, it might mean me standing next to you at a trial, right? Like, it might be you and me in juvenile court together, and I'm
Right.
standing there next to you, and I can't get you out of anything, but you'll never go through it by yourself.
Right.
And
Right.
that's what I wanted to instill in them, was a sense of security. And that's probably because, again, we go back to the things we wanted and the things we needed in our youth. And I
Yep.
didn't really feel like I had that from anyone. So I wanted my kids to have that, and I wanted them to know that they were valued enough and they were important enough that there was somebody who was there for them and that they mattered. And again,
Yeah.
looking back at it, I can see where I took it to an unhealthy level, and it probably caused a lot of emotional stress on myself and made some of the other relationships I was in more difficult.
Right.
But that was kind of where it came from at the time.
So how do we fix this? First off, thank you for sharing all of this,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
we do not really take into consideration the dad when we're going through this type stuff, right? We don't really take into consideration how this really, because in most situations, not all but most, mom is the primary custodian.
Hmm.
Mom gets, because mom is primary, I mean, mom got to be real, 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 real bad for a judge to give dad custody. So usually it's mom. Mom gets all the time. Mom gets all the information first when it comes to whatever's going on at school, or if something bad happened that day, or there was an accident, or mom is always notified first. It's like everything is centered around mom. So mom is good because she know where her kids, she know where her, I call my kids my cubs. She knows where her cubs are. She knows what's going on with her
Right.
cubs. But we really don't consider how that dad all of a sudden is on his own little island trying to make scratch up some money and gets these couple days with his kids. We don't really think about how you all feel in that situation. We really don't give a damn, to be honest.
Right.
We don't care. We really just don't. We don't really take into consideration that, oh my God, this man made sure, or this man didn't fight me for a home, and he didn't fight me for money. He didn't fight me for anything. He didn't fight me for custody. He didn't fight me for anything. He just wanted to make sure these kids were in the home so they can grow, they don't have to move from place to place, that they're growing up in the same place. But not one time do we ever say, well, damn, how's the dad doing? How you doing? Do you want an extra week? Do you need an extra day? Would you like some extra
Right.
time? I'm going on vacation. Instead of them staying with my mom, can they come and stay with you? Or, we don't ever really think about how you all are feeling. And not just that, when the dad isn't good, everything can crumble. Because everything that we won in court, you're providing. Just
Right.
about, I mean, not everything, but
A
a
lot of
lot
the
of what
financial
dad,
stuff is coming from the
yeah,
financial
it's coming from
obligations to the court.
that 23 in a third, or whatever it is, 26 in a third. We're getting that from your check. This house,
Right.
that's coming from you. If something is broke, not working, if I don't have a man and something is wrong with this house that you and I bought together, I'm gonna call you to come fix it. I need you to come
Right.
fix it, and you're gonna come fix it because your kids are
Because
here.
my kids live there.
Yes.
Right.
But we don't think about, damn, is he good? Is he okay? Do you need more? Because guess what? Sometimes we just not that mature.
Well, that's
We just not on that
yeah.
level. And we really don't give a damn. Once you're gone, you are gone.
Right. I'll say I know, and I don't want to say too much because I don't want to reveal things about other people. I don't like the idea of telling other people's stories.
Right.
Those are theirs to tell. But I do know one woman who was incredible about that. And I told you a little bit about that the other day.
Yes.
She went through a divorce, and her whole perspective through that is, what's going to be best for my kids? How can I maintain a healthy co-parenting relationship with my ex-husband? how can I do this in a way to where they don't feel like they have to choose between mom and dad?
Oh, because
They
we didn't
never
even
feel
talk about that, the
they
choosing.
never feel guilty about
Mhm.
telling me what a good time they had when they were at their dad's. And I think a lot of that just comes from probably emotional maturity, emotional intelligence, maybe the way we're raised. Um, but and honestly, most divorces, at least when they first start, people are hurt. I mean, people are bitter, people are angry, people are hurt. People don't get married to get divorced, right?
No.
So I think it's important that if we truly want to do what's in the best interest of the kids, I think in a divorce, you have to be willing to listen to all the cliches that you're going to hear about. Don't use the kids to hurt the father, you know, um, think about don't talk trash about either one of the parents in front of the kids. And those are hard things to do because everything is raw during a divorce. Everybody is
Right.
very, very emotional during a divorce.
Right.
I mean, there was a friend of mine who got divorced, and it was especially ugly. He's a divorce attorney, and he was complaining. He's like,
He a
I
divorce
didn't
attorney, got
cheat on
divorced.
her. I don't yeah, a couple of times actually, that guy. But he was complaining about he's like, "I've seen some really ugly divorces, but they all involved, infidelity or abuse or whatever, and I just, I don't wanna be married to her." And somebody told him, he was like, "Yeah, she's mad because you left her for nobody." you know, as opposed to you leaving her for another woman, you
Right.
left her to be alone. So I think anytime there's a divorce, no matter what it's over, there's a feeling of rejection, there's a feeling of failure, there's a feeling of betrayal because, the vows all say the same thing.
Correct.
The issue is, can we deal with that stuff separately from how we co-parent? Because if we really want to do what's best for the kids, that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
But it's just a very difficult place to get to. I don't think you can do it if you surround yourself with people who want to egg on the hatred and the bitterness. If you
Mhm.
surround yourself with friends that are talking about what a piece of trash the husband was, or what a piece of trash the wife was, you didn't
Right.
deserve them, they didn't deserve you anyway, because all that's going to do is fuel all that hatred and bitterness and the way you treat each other, as
Right.
opposed to you know, treating each other like adults who can't be together for whatever reason, whether one of you doesn't want to be with the other or whether both of you don't want it. It doesn't really matter. It only takes one person to break the deal. So, how can we do this in a way that's going to limit the damage we do to our children? You know,
Correct.
and I think the
Because
way
it's
you do
gonna
that
be
is
some
just,
damage.
oh, absolutely. And there are some, and it's not just the women, it's the men too. There's plenty of people who alienate the other parent or trash talk the other parent in front of the kids and purposely go behind the other parent's back and do things that, the other parent won't do so they can get into that spot of favoritism. So I think it's
Mhm.
both sides of that. You just have to work at, understanding that it's not a game with the children. It's not about who they like the most. It's about what's best for them and raising them in a way that they don't feel like they have to choose parents, and they don't feel like they have to hide the fact that they not only love but like the other parent. That should be
Correct.
welcome.
Correct.
My fiance has always had, from the time we were dating, she's always had pictures, at least one picture in both of her kids' room of her, the kids, and her ex-husband, you
Mhm.
know, and she was like, that's their father, that's their family.
Right.
And I always respected that. Like, I never had an issue with it from the first time I saw it, and it surprised me more than anything else because I'd never seen it before. But her
Right.
whole thing with that is like that's their family. That's their
Right.
father, and there's no reason that they should feel awkward about having those photos of him. So, I think if we can take an attitude like that
Right.
towards it,
Right.
it
So
helps.
your let me read a comment here. Every summer, my mini me went to see her daddy and family. It was never a problem. It was about her, and to this day, they have a wonderful relationship. I wouldn't have it any other way.
That's excellent. I mean, that's exactly what you need.
Don't be bitter. We have a responsibility to prepare our children for the time when we aren't here.
That is something I've told my kids probably from the time they could understand what I was saying to them. My job is to get you ready for the day that I'm not on this earth anymore. My job is to get you ready for the day that something happens and you need to call me, but you can't call me anymore. And if I'm
Right.
not doing that, I'm failing you as a father. So yeah, I
Correct.
absolutely agree with that.
Yeah. So now that so if you could have a little bit of a do-over, how would you go
Hmm.
about handling the situation where you know the missing your children, that part of course you can't really fix, but how would you, if you could and you realize, okay, maybe I went a little too far, how would you handle that in the future? Was that well, not in the future, if you had a do-over, how would you have handled that situation?
I think if I could go back, I would just probably institute some more reasonable boundaries with the kids as far as, those late night phone calls, those last minute. Hey, I mean, this actually happened once where my son called me the night before. I was working a part-time job. They were out of Uncrustables, those peanut butter and jelly sandwich things. It was all
Hmm.
he ate at the time. That was it. He ate that or he didn't eat lunch. And I can't remember the reason why, but I wasn't able to get them on the way home. I can't remember what it was. And the next morning, I was going to pick them up. I was fortunate enough that I stayed close to their mother's house. I was going to pick
Hmm.
them up and drop them off on my way to work so that they were there for them. And Kroger opened later than I thought it did. I thought it would be open when I got there. And like I remember emailing, my boss, like, hey, I'm going to be about an hour late because I wasn't going to work until I had the Uncrustables.
Got them
Like
crustable
at
things.
this at this point it was a mission. I had told my son I was going to do this for him, and short of some type of pending disaster, it wasn't going to change. So I think that was beyond the scope of reason, and I should have been able to go when I got that phone call the night before. I should have said, listen, I will try to get these to you, but I just don't know if I'm gonna be able to do it. And if I
Right.
don't, I'll get them to you tomorrow afternoon. You can go one day and eat ham and cheese or eat, whatever else you want to eat. You're gonna be
Right.
okay. But to
Yeah.
me, it was more of like, this is he needs you now. Are you gonna come through for him or are you
Hmm.
gonna, fail him? And I think if I could readjust my expectations of myself during that
Yeah.
time period,
Yeah.
it would probably help things go a lot better.
Yeah. Did you and I heard you say a couple times that you went through therapy to get through this dark spot that you were in. Did you
Mhm.
continue the therapy and are you still doing it?
I've done it on and off, and a lot of that honestly has to do with insurance. It's there was a couple of therapists that I really, really liked, but they stopped accepting my insurance. And when you're on a budget anyway, for me, it's hard to justify, even though I understand the importance of mental health, spending $200-300 a session when that money could be going to your children or some other type of
Right.
need.
Right.
But yeah, I've done therapy throughout the divorce, a little bit after. um, I've been in a pretty good place for several years now. Like I said, it started when my oldest daughter came to live with me.
Mhm.
There have been times where I've been in rough patches where I've gone back to see a therapist and kind of talk through things. I'm a huge proponent of therapy, especially talk therapy. I'm a huge
Yeah.
proponent of that, of processing that stuff. I would recommend it for anybody. And if I got into a place where I felt like I needed it again, I would definitely go back.
Good, good, good. This is good. I appreciate you so much for opening up. Sometimes it's hard to so since I've been doing this little journey, it's I get women all the time when we love to talk. We love to share. We share everything. But men, y'all are funny. I mean, and I guess some of it is a machismo thing that you don't want to look a certain kind of way, when you talk to women. But I think it's important for women to understand men coming from men, not us telling y'all what you think, but
Right.
you all telling us. So because we have that problem. See, we women have this problem of we ask you all for your opinion, what you think, your advice, why do guys act like this? And then you tell us, and then we'll say, well, I don't think it should be like that. I think it's
Right.
XYZ, you
Right.
know, but we're trying to get it from the man. We tend to forget, we're not men. And so sometimes we have to learn to understand what men go through same things just like us. Y'all go through things just like we do. And you all have your secret society of men friends that
Right.
have similar experiences just like you, that advise you, how to move past what you're going through. As we're older now, in our 20s, yeah, it was like, hey man, run to the club. We going to the club. Yeah, that's how we get over her. We gonna run to the club. But when you're older and more mature, running to the club is not your first option. It's more of a support. Did you find that with your group, with your male friends, that we weren't running to the club, we were doing something different?
So I think it's a little bit different. I think that like there's definitely one or two that were all about the idea of running to the club, you know. I wasn't a club kind of guy. I know that's hard to believe. Um, but I think it depends on who you kind of surround yourself with. You know, there are
Yes,
some people, and I think again that's just an emotional maturity and emotional intelligence thing. There are
correct.
some people that that's going to be the way that they deal with stuff is they distract themselves from it, right? And there's other people that you can find that are going to tell you like, look, you just got to sit in this. It's going to be uncomfortable, and you
Oh,
got to sit in it, and you got to process it. And I told you the other day, you know, in general, men don't have a support system, right? Like men aren't taught by their fathers growing up how to process feelings and how to be emotionally mature and how to deal with things. They're taught either to hide it or to put it down or, you compartmentalize it, you let it come out in other ways, but we
right.
never talk about our feelings. We definitely never cry. You know, you got to suck it up. You got to put this kind of, and we've hurt ourselves. Men have hurt themselves over generations by building that up. I mean, that's just not how we're designed to operate as humans. You know,
Right.
we have emotions, we have feelings. We need to recognize them. We need to process them. We need to come to grips with them.
Right.
And if you're lucky as a man, you will meet other men who let you know that's okay and who can encourage you to do that. Like
Hmm.
it's fine for you to feel this way. It's fine for you to deal with this. It's fine for you to be sad. You know, the answer's not in the club. The answer's not in on Tinder or, with a bunch of young girls with daddy issues. That's not going to help you. That's not going to accomplish anything.
What's your
You're
daughter's
going to
your
end up.
daughter's age?
Exactly. I know a few guys that go that route.
Yeah,
And I'm sure it's fun, but I mean, at the end of the day, I'm sure anybody who's ever been in couples therapy has heard the idea that you either deal with the problems in this relationship or you deal with the same problems in the next relationship,
exactly.
right? So we have to, as men, and I told you this, I think the other day when we were talking, like
Hmm.
we have to raise our sons to be more emotionally intelligent than we were. And we have to raise our daughters in a way that they are not attracted to men who are less emotional intelligent than us. You don't want your daughter becoming one of those women who always has a project instead of a partner. This is
Oh,
somebody I can fix. This is somebody who they're okay. I can help them. And at the same time, you don't want to be raising a man who has no respect for a good partner,
correct.
who doesn't understand. And it's just, I think it comes down to accepting and respecting the differences in men and women and
Yeah,
understanding, like you were saying, women can't explain men to men and men can't explain women to men. Like you need to hear from me what it's like to be a man, like the way I need to hear what it's like from you to be a woman. I was in a
yes.
discussion with my fiance once, and she was like, "Do you have any idea what it's like to not be able to have a friend that doesn't want to sleep with you?" Like as
Mm,
a woman, it is so rare to have somebody just on your social media or that in real life, like message you
right,
just to talk to you without any
right,
ulterior motives. And I can
right,
tell you as a man, I absolutely have no idea what that's like because men don't have the same issue as women do.
right.
And it's something I had never really considered, like the fact that every time a male initiate some type of conversation with you, the idea in the back of your mind of what's this guy's motive?
Right.
What's going on here? And that's something that as a guy you would never even think is a problem. You wouldn't understand that it's a
Right.
problem. So
Right.
I think a lot of things can be gained both ways when men and women talk to each other about what it's like from their perspective,
Yeah.
you know.
Yep. I think, when we were talking also, we were talking about that men need their own support system. They need a support group. Like we have support
Absolutely.
groups. We got support groups for women in menopause. We got support groups for women with children. We got support groups for women in domestic violence. We got support groups for we have all kind of groups. But y'all don't really have those type of groups like we have, do you?
You really don't. There are some like church-based groups, like Promise Keepers or men's groups or whatever, which is fine. The issue there is that if you're at a point in your spiritual journey to where you're not comfortable going in a church, you're going to definitely kind of stray away from those groups. Especially if it's not the faith system you follow.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but no, there aren't a lot of those groups in general. Do you know Mike Porter by any chance?
I do.
From All right, so I think my oldest daughter was maybe 3 or 4 years old, and he called me one Father's Day, and he goes, "Hey man, I just wanted to say Happy Father's Day. I think it's important that men support each other, and from everything I know about you, you seem to be a good father, and I just want to tell you that it's important, you know, to be active in your daughter's life." And I mean, that was what 18 years ago.
Yeah.
And I started doing that same thing on Father's Day. I would call somebody and just tell them, pass that on. And I
Yeah.
never forgot that. I always thought that was
Yeah.
something very, very impressive.
Yeah.
But if you're lucky as a man, you find mentors like that out there.
Yeah.
But in general, there are not the same type of support structures for men that
Yeah.
there are for women. Like it's got to be something you seek out, or
Yeah.
that you're lucky enough to have people in your tribe or in your group that fill in those slots for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you. We got a couple more comments. Let's go through right quick. Cindy said, great
Thank you. I'm
conversation.
glad you enjoyed it.
Yes, this was very informative from a male perspective. Blessy said, thank you, Mike, for opening up to us.
Very welcome, Miss Moses. Thank you for being here.
Malika said, that's good. Yes. Yes. I appreciate it. I appreciate you for sharing and opening up and um, giving us some insight because most of my viewers are women, giving us some insight. But there's one message. I don't know if you saw it or not, but I want to make sure that you see it because I really think that it's important that you know this. This is from E Dukes. Throughout their childhood journey, you were amazing to them. And now they are older and they remember that. I think
I
that's
hope
important
so.
that you.
I
Oh,
uh I
they know.
really really appreciate that. That means the world to me when and that's the reason I did the stupid stuff I did with waiting outside of Kroger for PB&J sandwich. It was the idea that the hope that one day they would look back and realize that that man said he loved me more than anything on the planet, and it
Hmm.
was it was apparent that he did. Those were not just words. So
Yep.
thank you
Those
very
kids
much
will
for saying
know.
that, and I hope it's the
Those,
truth.
they will know, especially those girls. They
I
will.
hope so.
They. Oh,
I
absolutely.
tried to set a standard for both of them to where they knew how they needed to be treated and they knew what was acceptable. And I will say my youngest is involved in that. Well, she's married. She married her high school sweetheart over Christmas break.
Hmm.
And I love the guy to death. I think he's a great guy. He takes good care of her. I think she made a good choice. So I was hoping that I could give them something to kind of hold other people a standard to hold other guys to. So
Yeah.
hopefully that worked out
And
well.
you did. I mean, if you like him, he's pretty good then.
He's a good guy. He really is. I got no
Good.
issue with it. I mean,
Good.
other than the fact they're 18 and married, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. And
I
I told him
know.
this
I
is a
know.
terrible idea,
It
but you
is.
guys are going to do what you're going to do. So
Yeah. And hey, it's their journey. It's their journey.
that's exactly what
We
yep,
just pray that that they
that's
can
it.
pull it through. But that it's kind of young. But do you have any closing remarks?
Not really. I appreciate you taking the time and having me on. And it's a tough one going dads in divorce because everybody's just hurt and hurting. And people aren't really thinking rationally. But I think that
Right.
if we can, both men and women, when you're going through a divorce, if kids are involved, if you really truly think about what's in the best interest of those kids, and you don't just use that as a catchphrase,
Yeah,
if you put
cliche.
everything through that filter, it's going to end up being a lot better for everybody,
It
you
is.
know,
And
because eventually,
yeah, eventually.
eventually all the pain and everything washes out eventually. And if what you've done during that is created a bunch of chaos in that kid's heart and mind, you have to deal with that later. But if
Yeah.
you've managed to keep that kind of a protected area, then when mom moves on with her life and dad moves on with her life, or dad moves on with his life, you've got a kid who's, pretty much unscathed, or at the very
Mhm.
least, they see that you can divorce and the kids be okay. So if
Yeah.
they're in a relationship later that they feel like is toxic or they feel like isn't working, their concern isn't like, oh my God, I can't let this happen to my kid. They know there's a way to get out of this and we can all be okay if we do it the right
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Well, this was good. We went just a tad bit over, but that's
Yeah, sorry,
okay.
sorry to keep you.
It no, I appreciate it. But those of you that are watching, if you can do me a favor right now, take your finger and hit that like button. Just hit the like button. Hit the like button a couple times if you like. Hit the like button because that's how we grow this channel. I'm learning that hitting the like button, subscribing, and sharing builds the algorithm up for me. I can't even Google me right now. I got to be able to Google me one day. So hit that like button for me if you guys don't mind. And also, we if you feel it deep down, if you really enjoyed the conversation and you liked what I'm doing and you want me to keep going and you want me to keep sharing and all that good stuff, we got to contribute to the building fund. We are starting to build and I need new equipment. Eventually I want to be able to take this podcast on the road with me and go out to different businesses and do have professional equipment while we're out there going live and with our studio audience and the whole thing. So if you like and if you feel it in your bones to do a donation, that's that cash app, hit me up at the Mission for Mental Health. So on this one, you're going to use the number 4. So yes, if you would like to donate to the building fund, it's there for you to do. And as always, if you would like to be a guest on the show, or if you know someone who would like to be a guest on the show, you can hit me up on all of my social media platforms under Mission for Mental Health. You can email me, text me, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell me. You can do whatever. You can send a letter or email. Do they send letters still? Do people still send
You,
letters?
I know you can do it. I don't know how long it's going to take to get it, but it can be
And I
done.
don't even know how much a stamp costs. But if you want to do it, you can. I'm right here. You can hit me up on the email. You can text me. You can hit me on social. You can dig in my DMs, as the young folks say. You can do all that good stuff. If you would like to be a guest on the show, let me know. And because I would love to share your story. Like I tell you all every week, I didn't ask for this calling. It was given to me. God woke me up out my sleep and told me this is what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to be talking about mental health. And mental health comes in all type of different forms. And so I want to be able to share with any and everybody. Hopefully my message will reach somebody. And as I say all the time, healing is in the conversation, y'all. The only way we can heal is if we talk about it. The only way we can heal is if we talk about it. So healing is in the conversation. I will see you all next week. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And you all have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your week. Be careful watching the Super Bowl if y'all out in these streets. The police is out here too. So be careful in these streets while y'all are out here watching this Super Bowl. I don't have a dog in this fight on this Super Bowl, y'all. What about you, Sarvis? You got a dog in this fight for the Super Bowl?
Not at all. Not at all.
Well, the only dog that I'm fighting is Usher. Woo woo! Y'all know I love Usher. Yay! 13 minutes of Usher. That's the only thing I'm fighting during this Super Bowl is to watch Usher. But y'all enjoy your week, and I will see you all next Wednesday. Have a good one. Bye bye.